3. The armies. The General Jourdan had quitted us for the army. Champione and MacDonald commanded in the southern part of Italy. Joubert was sent to Milan to replace Brune, and he was named general of our army in Holland. He whom Napoleon had named the Child of Victory, Massena, went to Switzerland to await the Russians. Preparation upon all the lines of operations took place on both sides for the interior. I do not speak so much of the Council of Ancients as of the Council of 500, because, as I was a member of the last, I knew better what passed. The sentiment which predominated among the ancients was that of the insufficiency of the Constitution of the year 3. Sieyès had signalized its deficiency of equilibrium between the powers as the indubitable cause of new troubles. The 18th Fructidor had confirmed his foresight, and to which his refusal to enter the Directory had given a greater influence. They regretted not having paid greater attention to his counsels. They complained of his absence. They felt vaguely that in a short time they should be forced into new combinations, and that no person was more capable than Sieyès to direct them. A serious inquietude upon the future destiny of the Republic troubled the Council of Ancients. That inquietude became more sensible according as the agitation increased in the minds of the young. They followed, however, sometimes our impulsion, all the time fearing the revolutionary exaltation towards which we were driven by the new war, which there was no longer any hope of averting. That exaltation manifested itself in a manner not very honorable upon the subject of the transported in Fructidor. The greatest part of these victims died in the deserts of Signor Marie. 4 or 5 only had escaped from the dreadful agony of so atrocious an exile by flying to Suriname, where the Dutch had received them, and from thence they took refuge in London. Pichegru was among the number, whose treason had been undeniably proved by the papers which Moreau himself had seized and delivered up to the Directory. But among the fugitives was also the director Barthélemy, who the first had signed treaties of peace in the name of the Republic. Barthélemy, whose integrity, moderation, and pacific glory merited from his ancient colleagues respect and clemency. Another of the proscribed, whose notable and simple character honored the Council of Ancients, Barbé Marbois, had refused to escape, that he might not compromise the fortune of his family. The escape of some of the transported irritated the Directory, and they brought upon the carpet a new project of law that had been presented after the 18th Fructidor, and which they had abandoned. They came to propose to us to assimilate with the emigres, the transported who had concealed themselves to avoid transportation, or who had escaped from the place of their transportation, except that within the space of 2 months they presented themselves to the French authorities to learn the place of their future transportation. And the penalty of the emigrants was death. I abstained from voting, although the whole of the opposition united with the directorials. That law, worthy of 1793, passed almost unanimously in the Council of 500, and in a great majority of the ancients. In that last council, several noble voices were raised in favor of justice and humanity. Among us, one single orator, the intrepid Lucien, dared speak for the proscribed. He braved the cries and the outrages, and sustained alone against all during several weeks a combat in which all the glory was for the vanquished. In expiation of the silent neutrality I had kept in that circumstance, and with which I afterwards reproached myself, I will cite some of the eloquent words of the orator Lucien. Representatives of the people, a month after the 18th Fructidor, that is to say, at an epoch near to that day, the project of law that is now proposed was rejected as useless and unjust, as contrary to the Constitution, as revolutionary. And a year afterwards, it is reproduced at the discussion. This project contains a constraint, the confiscation, the permanence of the penalty, and with regard to those persons whom you recall they have never been judged. It is as unjust as it is without example to ordain a man to return to present himself for execution. I know that the Grand Signor sends the cord to the Pasha with whom he is discontented, to the vizier who displeases him, but I have never heard that he commands his victims to come themselves and take the fatal cord. A coup d'etat should not drag after it but a momentary penalty. Never should a perpetual punishment result from it. Do you remember what Condorcet had put in the Constitution? A penalty pronounced as a measure of public welfare should never extend beyond 6 months. No tyrant, not even Nero, ever thought of punishing a man because he did not come to demand his own execution. And your reporter, in proposing such a code against our ancient colleagues, pronounces at every phrase the words of justice, of humanity, of clemency. I must own that my hair rises upon my head. Is it then with a sardonic laugh that they plunge the poniard? At these words, I am answered with bursts of laughter. Representatives of the French people, cried Lucien, I could imagine your laughing if the question was to pardon, but I cannot conceive that you mean when it is a question of punishment. They thought to reply to Lucien, speaking of the excesses committed by the royalists during the reaction, as if Barthélemy and his companions had organized the bands of the companies of the Sun. They reproached the transported fugitives for having taken refuge in England, as if there had been so many free countries upon the earth where one was sure to meet with an asylum against all tyrannies. But such was ever the pitiless logic of factions, and factions rise naturally more violent in moments of alarm.